Hey, so Mara, lovely to have you here. Obviously strange to be doing this virtually, but I think we're all adjusting to this.
Absolutely.
Um, I know this isn't the first sort of time you've had to navigate a crisis. Your brand has been around for 20 years. Over that time, you've made a number of adjustments. In 2015, you made a big pivot to focus specifically on operating more responsibly from an environmental and social standpoint. But the last month and a half has really been unprecedented. And I wanted to start by asking you, what has that been like for you as a small business owner, and as a small business owner specifically focused on operating a responsible business? How do you do that in such a time of crisis?
Well, I think I can speak for any business owner, regardless of how they've been running their business. It's been an incredibly scary time, and I think the first few weeks of this were extraordinarily unsettling, and one of the most challenging times in my career to actually be a leader. And because I really didn't know what to hold on to because there was so much unknown. So it's been a series of waves of feeling some sense of stability or understanding, and it can change within a day. And I think that those first few weeks were really intense in that trying to, run up a sand hill basically, and then bring people with you and hold a team and try to stand from a place of confidence, or balancing that with vulnerability. So it's been a very interesting challenge in leadership for me, and I think for everyone involved, and watching a company that was built on certain systems collapse very quickly, watching an industry that was built on systems collapse very quickly and then try to find footing within it has been an extraordinary challenge. It's been a very telling one, and I think that many veils are being lifted right now. So there are incredible things at play right now, but it's been a series of waves.
And I want to dig into a lot more of that in a minute, because I think you're right. There's so much in play and there's so much to talk about. But before that, when you talk about running up a sandhill, what steps have you taken to sort of manage through this? What's your advice to others at the moment?
Oh. I
I
think
know it's tough.
the general advice is to try to retreat from the external chaos of what's happening. That would be general advice. I think for us, we've had to act very reactively and not necessarily. It's interesting because I think of the difference in acting either reactively or responsively. And I think that there's been a lot of reactive action right now because we don't have the time really to think things through for a long period of time. So for us, regrettably, we've had to furlough quite a few of our employees, and then the existing employees have gone through salary cuts. And it's been a challenge for everyone who's involved in the company. And we've also hit every budget and every spend basically with a machete, gone through every place that we can contract to do that, looking at present moment, next 3 months. And everything is sort of in this imaginary space of, okay, let's imagine 3 months of a scenario. Then let's imagine 6 months. And then let's imagine past that. But everything is kind of in this very fluid space with it. So immediately we had to shift the employee status, which has been a very challenging one for us, and then start looking at immediately at our inventory, which has been a huge part of this for us, and what our near term manufacturing plans will be. And one of those plans has been to cancel our upcoming fall collection from going into manufacturing and use every bit of inventory that we have to work with that. We found ourselves sitting with so much, which really goes against the ethos and what we've been trying to build. And inventory is such a big part of efforts towards sustainability. And so we really got hit with this, sitting with a huge percentage of our spring collection that wasn't taken by our wholesale partners and that was already coming in late due to this before we went into a work from home situation. And so thinking about how to go forward, how do you deal with inventory? It's not by making more inventory. So that was a very tough call, but we've been scrambling to figure out new offerings to offer to our wholesale partners and how we can manage that through our own outlets, our e-com.
I mean, it definitely sounds like this has been a very challenging time and there's been some very difficult decisions. And I think some of the points you raised there are very interesting in terms of, one, how it kind of revealed within your own system the level of inventory you had, but also I'm curious, as a company that is really focused on operating more responsibly, how did you approach these challenging decisions? And do you feel like it's revealed issues that you didn't realize weren't being addressed previously?
Absolutely. I think this is like the time of shadow, and everything that I think on a very personal level, and then on these larger collective business levels, everything's coming to the surface. Like there's nothing that can remain beneath anymore. You sort of have to take it all, spread it out, and deal with it right now. And, since we began these efforts 5 years ago and really shifted the direction of the company, we've done what we can within the allowed sort of time and space and budget to make the shifts that we've been able to do. But there's been so much more that we've wanted to do, and so many parts of the system that just felt needed fixing, but you're on this hamster wheel constantly. And so now, with everything stopping, you really get to examine what you weren't happy about with your business till now. And it gives you this opportunity to examine what's the new world of this going to be, because so much of it I'm done with. Like, I don't want to go into the next part with some of the broken systems. And I think in some way it's a gift to be, stuck with your shadows so intimately during this time. And inventory is one of them. Seeing the pain points that we have had throughout this entire process of being a brand, and keeping to a schedule that doesn't support designers, being in relationship with wholesale partners that aren't really partnerships, and the weight on a company to, especially a small company like myself, to be able to finance for these larger companies. And then really digging into supply chain and seeing where there are broken parts to that. No matter how much vetting and work we've done within this, something like this really brings to the surface how you need to make shifts going forward.
Well, I want to dig into all of those points, but before we do, at this point where you've had a chance to step back and reflect, were there any things that surprised you that you felt were broken, that you hadn't realized when you were on that hamster wheel were the issue? Because a lot of the things you raised, I think, as you said, we all kind of knew these were problems the industry needed to fix, but no one really knew how or when. Have other things emerged that were less front of mind before?
I think some of the vulnerabilities around different partnerships, definitely. I think we were just in so much go mode for so long that the slowdown is letting those parts come up. Some of the reliances on partners, either on the manufacturing side or the wholesale side, that are so unstable. And that with a little bit of a shift, that like that could be the downfall for you. And so definitely relationships, as I've mentioned many times already on this conversation, the inventory thing, I think as a leader and someone, I almost myself put a blind eye, or just thinking we would catch up in some way. And now it's really, really hard to catch up.
And let's talk a little bit about solutions, because the topic of this talk is unity within the fashion industry. And one of the really big issues you raised are these relationships between manufacturers, relationships with wholesalers. as those appear to have broken down and you see the inequality between how risk is distributed between partners within the industry and how a crisis like this can cascade down, leaving many really stuck. How do you feel the industry should be addressing this going forward? What solution do you see?
I think the first part of this is through collaboration, and it's through unifying in a different way as an industry than we have before. We found that when we made this initial shift, one of the really exciting positive parts to that was seeing how the people that had already been in this space long before we were so eager to help us, and that there was a community that existed there, and the community was based on this idea that if we are in it for the right reasons, then we want to help everyone else get to this same place, as opposed to this kind of old proprietary idea that has been such a huge part of the fashion industry for so long, is that everything belongs to different people and there's this competitive nature to it. But what we've found in these years working up to this is how much further you can get, clearly, when you're working with a community that wants to see you succeed. And I think it's the same thing that's happening right now, that we have this opportunity as an industry, even for those that sustainability wasn't front of mind, or they were trying to get there, because I think that there are a lot of people that really want to be there. I know for us, the years leading up, that we hadn't made that switch. I wanted to be there, but it felt so daunting. And then finally, it was through the support of other brands and other collectives that really helped us. So I see that is a huge part to how we're going to make this shift now, is coming together as an industry and deciding a new set of rules, coming up with a new calendar that works in favor of the designers. I think that we have to examine our scale as a whole. We have to examine our offering. How much are we just playing into this hunger that is so out of control, that is a huge reason why we're in the place that we are right now, is because this insatiable monster has been built, that everyone feels that they have to keep feeding. Okay, we need more newness. We need to get more offerings out there, more clothing, and it's just become completely out of control. So we need to come together and sort of create a new manifesto, one that is built for the new world. And I'm not sure it includes all of us, to be honest. I don't know if all of us can make it through to the other side, or if we should. There is somewhat of a clearing that is happening right now. And if we look at it through that perspective, there's importance in that we have to become tighter and more focused and more intentionality. And those that are participating in this industry have to do it with a whole nother sense of unified vision for the planet and its human beings and all of its creatures right now. The plants, the animals, the whole thing has to come into consideration.
I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, and especially I like that you raised the fact that this is a struggle. It's not, not everyone will necessarily make it to the other side of this. We may all want to do the right thing, but it's not easy. And to that point, when you talk about the industry coming together, do you see that happening? How do we make that happen?
I think that it's happening in small pockets. I think that it's happening in similarly sized businesses that can communicate with each other. So businesses, I have a few different networks of like-minded business owners, mostly women-led businesses, that are in conversation and in collective support with each other, and are very honest and vulnerable in their conversation. I think that there's something to be said about feminine leadership right now, and how important that is, that we are in a space of healing through this. And however out there that sounds, it's incredibly important. So to get every big industry brand involved and feeling that same level of compassion and empathy, it will take those things right now. Like this, going back to this old world, masculine leadership idea of just like pushing outward constantly broke us. And so I think that those that feel like there are other parts of this that are emotional, they are spiritual, they are interconnected for all businesses going forward. And I think some people, like, that's just an idea that will never feel comfortable. And so,
And that's a really interesting point. I mean, right now, are there important players who you feel aren't coming to the table? I mean, when we talk about needing the industry to come together, to shift the seasonal model, to have fairer partnerships, I mean, really, we need the big wholesale players to
yeah.
come on board, right? Are any of them engaging in that conversation? And if they don't, are there new models that we can move towards to circumvent them?
I think there are. I think that there are people that really are stuck in their own hamster wheels, or companies that it's very hard to change habitual behavior, because I think that we're all feeling this through this, that the scariest part of this is the uncertainty aspect. So sometimes it's easier to go back to an old habit that was broken than think of something unknown, or to have the courage to try something that you have no proven track record for. So I think some of these larger companies are built on so much money, and that it's a terrifying idea and an unthinkable idea to even imagine completely switching systems. So that's happening. But then I think, though, on the insides of some of these companies are really thoughtful, feeling people that understand a change is necessary. So they're working from the inside out. As far as everyone making these shifts, who knows? I think that still money will come out on top in a big way after this. It's going to take us a really long time, if ever, to sort of shift priorities in order to fix ourselves and heal ourselves as a planet. And putting money on top isn't the way, but it's going to be a really challenging one. As far as for what we can be doing as brands and our own companies is, I think, really thinking into owning more of our companies, more ownership, and thinking about our direct sales and how to grow those parts. And that I really think that we're not, once we get through this, whatever that means to get through this, like, we're not in the clear. It isn't like, okay, we did that, woof, back to normal, let's go. Like, I think, not to scare anyone, but I think that we have to start thinking of this as somewhat of a beta experience, that whether we're going to go through a next series of pandemics, or we're going to go through, environmental breakdowns that could feel very similar to this, these next years ahead of us, we should be prepared for a very nimble, newly formed way of working with one another and having businesses, and really re-examining, when you are a manufacturing company and you are making things, what does that look like in a new world that is continually going through these types of contractions, that, you can't be in the same room with people. So I think it's about thinking of these systems that you're owning more of your own business. You're in less of a vulnerable position with outside companies. And that if they decide, oh, sorry, I'm not going to take responsibility for a huge order I place because I've got enough inventory right now, that you, especially as a smaller, medium-sized brand, you're not in that position. Like, I think every move we make as an industry and as separate brands going forward, we have to think of this somewhat as our new model, not the old version. This, start building a model from this. And that is, did I get burned? Did that not work? Okay, let's plan on it not working again.
And when you look at the need for more community action within the industry, if certain large players aren't going to get on board, do you have thoughts on what that should look like? Would it make sense for small or medium-sized brands to be looking at forming types of cooperatives to allow them to have more leverage when they go and negotiate with manufacturers or with wholesalers, or things like that?
I think that that's great. I mean, yes, more collaborative, get together, build community out of this in every way you can build your communities right now. From your personal lives, strengthen your community, from your business lives. This is a huge call for community. There is power in numbers right now. So absolutely, like, I can't tell you how we're going to storm the castle fully yet, and how much effort should be about storming an old castle, or is it about building, a new empire. So I kind of think along those lines, that are maybe not inclusive of so many old models, or like begging dinosaurs to evolve. It's really going to be important where we put our energies. So is it like get up, dead horse, or let's rethink this? Let's be okay and courageous enough to jump into the unknown and the discomfort of the unknown, and start thinking about new worlds from that place.
What are the core things that you are focusing on once this immediate crisis is over? When you think about the other side of this, whatever that looks like, have you got in your head a number of things that are the first areas that you want to focus on to move into this new world?
Yeah, I think it's all of these things that have been on our hearts and our heads as a company, and the exec team and the people that are engaged and very deeply involved in the real workings of this company, and those parts that have felt like the truest, and it's the ones that are very much focused on the environmental and social aspects of what it means to be an enterprise that is actually of service. Yes, we make product, and that part deeply needs to be examined right now. And it's been a part of my discomfort for years. And if anyone has heard me speak on different panels, they've usually probably heard some bit of, if you are working in or towards sustainability, then you're probably really uncomfortable. Because if we are manufacturing anything new, or we are in that place, there's conflict to that. And we haven't gotten it right yet. So I think about the parts of my business that could really use refinement, and that I want to be different. I want this schedule to be different. I want our offerings to be different. I want the scale of what we are offering to be different. I want to focus on the strongest parts of my supply chain, the most transparent parts of my supply chain, and lean into those parts, and let go of the parts that like didn't feel like fully there. I think that it's really understanding our fabrication, our fiber portfolio, and that it isn't about offering this huge wide range of every fabric. Like, get tight right now, get creative, hone in on the parts that are really working, and then also hone in on where we can build out future models. If it's like onshore, there's great initiatives to build things onshore here, and work within farming communities, working with growing different types of fibers here, working with climate beneficial yarns. Like, there are parts that we've been so excited about. And now as I look forward to what's next, it needs to be about a very focused, contracted vision for this. I feel
And is
very
that
excited about those parts, but it definitely is a contraction.
and is that how you balance all of these initiatives, which sound very exciting, but it sounds like also quite a few of them will need investment
Mhm.
against the financial difficulties everyone is
Call me. No, sorry.
Speak
Who's
later.
it?
We have a bunch of questions coming through, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask some of the stuff the audience is looking at.
Ooh, I'm nervous. What do we got here?
So we are getting a question. Some people believe that sustainability is going to come out weaker after all of this, and some people, as we've just been discussing, believe the opposite. What's your take? Is this going to make people say we don't have money to spend on this anymore, or
It's
do
both
people double down?
sides. It's both sides. I mean, the idea of sustainable clothing is so privileged and is incredibly exclusive right now. And that's been one of its hugest issues. It costs so much to do this type of work. I think that's part of getting more people involved, so that we can go in with larger orders and make it more of the norms so that prices can come down for it and make it more accessible to people. But absolutely, it's been the same thing. I mean, what we're going through right now is exposing, not just in the fashion industry, but so much of the broken parts of I can speak specifically for the America, and the world as a whole, and the inequality that it happens here. And so, yeah, people are going to come out of this struggling and suffering, absolutely. And will their top of their mind be about buying a sustainable dress? No, it'll be about feeding themselves and taking care of their children and education and getting something on a piece of clothing on them. So it's the same issue. We have a lot of broken parts of our overall system that needs fixing. 100%. It is not just the fashion industry. Will I think a certain sect of people will be thinking more about sustainable fashion? Absolutely. The people that have the means and the privilege to be able to think those kind of thoughts right now or after.
And there's a follow-on question to that, which leads on really nicely. Do you think that the onus is on the fashion sector focused on sustainability to make sustainable fashion more affordable in order to allow it to penetrate further?
Absolutely. I think that there are, enormous corporations that could make better moves right now. And I think a huge part of it, that though, is scale. And I think it's about shifting. We have so much waste. I think just even beginning there with the level in which we manufacture that ends up getting burnt, millions of pounds of clothing gets burnt. Like, what are we doing? I think we could examine that and start somewhere there. But yeah, I think there's a huge onus on anyone that decides to stay in this industry or has, the ability to stay in there. What they do next, I hope that there will be spotlights on every single one of us to do better. And it is our responsibility to do that if we're going to be in this space. Otherwise, let's go away.
When you mentioned the issue of inventory getting burned,
Mm-hmm.
we've spoken a lot about inventory on this call. This is a huge, huge issue right now, and will be for many months.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see are the outlets to get rid of all of this stuff?
I don't know. I can just tell you within my own company, right now, it's about working with the partnerships that we have built over the years, the ones that do believe in the work that we're doing, that will look at things in less of this like season specific way and look at it more of, these are timeless pieces. We can spread this out. We can spread what we have out over the next year, and that feels reasonable. But for everyone else, I've had this is, I don't know. I don't know, because it feels like after this we're going to be like Planet Marshalls or like Planet TJ Maxx, where the aliens come here for 80% off of everything. I we're going to be that planet for a while. But I think it's the calling right now to just slow it down. Stop. Use what we have. Let's just stop for a minute and use what we have, because we have so much. We have so much. And I can just say that for my own company. Slow down. Stop making things. Use what we have. We're good. We're going to use what we have. And that's what we have. And that's what we're offering. And if you love it, great. Enjoy it. Wear it. If you're not, this is what we got.
I like that. Next question is from someone called Isabel Bowser. The question's about consumer sentiment. Like, are you counting on the morals of society to push the industry, to push you to move this forward as much as possible? How important is that?
I think it's really important. I think that the consumer has a voice more than they ever did. And I think that brands and companies are listening, because for whatever reason, either they're listening because they want to do what's right and they feel that deeply from the inside out, or because they know that there's money to be had if they speak to a certain movement, or if they are listening to their customers. So yes, it is a time to vocalize. If you are someone who spends money, talk to the brands, talk to the companies that you are giving your money to. Tell them what you expect out of them, what you want. Tell them, that you're not going to give them your money anymore unless they fix these parts. And I understand that there's a great responsibility to that, but we're all being asked to step up to new levels of responsibility. Us as the brands and the manufacturers, and people as the consumers. Like, we have a responsibility in how we spend every dollar that we have. Absolutely. It's a both-sided dance, but I think a lot of the movement will come from their customers saying, I can't buy you anymore. Like, what are you doing about this? Where are your shifts? And show me your efforts, because I'm sure you're not the only person in the world doing what you're doing. And I can maybe go there, and they are putting effort into it.
And if consumers stop asking for that because their focus is elsewhere after this, how dangerous is it? How important is the consumer push here? If that goes away, do we see a lot of the progress that has been made across the industry diminish?
I mean, I think that, this, what is it? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I think it's easier for companies and brands to slip back into bad habits if they feel that they're not being watched, or if they're not being not reprimanded, because I'm not at all here for a shaming game, but more in conversation, or being held responsible for things, that it'll be, of course, easier to take the lesser expensive route, the easier route that isn't caring for the humans behind that product, the environmental damage for it. Yeah, there are people still running companies that don't care. Um, so yeah, I think things could slip if people just decide to go to sleep right now.
Yep. We have a newsy question here from Maria, I think Dionisio, if I pronounced that right. Apologies if I didn't. Neiman Marcus could be filing for bankruptcy this week, as soon as this week. What do you think the impact will be on the industry and designers like yourself?
I think it's really hard. It depends for all of us that we do business there. I think it will be very hard, and I think it depends. What else can I say? Like, we're all struggling through this, and we will all take a hit, and it is a domino connection here. When those types of retailers file for bankruptcy, we suffer as designers. We're all in this. So yeah, the outcome will be hard, but I think that hopefully there will be another side to it, and it will be an inspiration for those that are affected by this to think of better, less vulnerable systems for themselves in the future, whether that means putting more of their attention into their own e-com or their marketing dollars, or whatever way that they have to own more of their business. This is
Do you,
not, they're not going to be the only one.
do you also see doing that, giving brands and designers more leverage down the line when they are negotiating with wholesalers?
I hope so. I think that that would really be part of a new structure for this, is being able to actually be partnered in it, where we are, first of all, producing to what's actually ordered, and that we are being, paid to make the clothes. So it's like, I was thinking about this, you go and you shop online, and you pay them the money, and then they deliver you the goods. It's not like that. For those that don't know, for us, it is, they place an order, you pay for every single thing, you ship it to them, and then maybe in like 30 or 60 days, you get paid for that. So there's so much upfront, it's crushing for companies, especially my size companies. So yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of new negotiations going forward.
So Kim Vanderweerd has a question exactly on this issue. One of the problems we've been talking about is the unequal distribution of risk, as you just described, Mara. Is there a contract model that has the potential to tackle this issue? What would a fairer contract look like?
I think helping finance an order up front from a brand. I think that there's something about that. I think it's a timing level. And I think also that, again, we're looking at these very weird contracts that even after the goods have been delivered, the brand is still responsible for a percentage of sell-throughs in most of these like larger company relationships. So if you have a contract for, say, a 60% sell-through and you don't hit that mark with them, the responsibility is on the designer and it's not on the retailer. So then you end up either writing them a check or you take the merchandise back, and then hence you're sitting on more inventory. So I think it's reestablishing an equal partnership that doesn't always put the retailer in the winning position, that we're both in it. Okay, there's a fair amount of risk for both sides in this, or you pay for half up front, I produce, and when I deliver, you pay for the rest. So at least it gives me the ability to make you this collection. And if you then turn out not wanting that from me, I'm not, well, you can't decide at the end that you just don't want it. So I think that that's a big part of it that we're finding right now.
And do you think there are specific steps that should be taken? As you mentioned earlier, this is not the last crisis of this kind we're going to face. Are there specific steps that the industry should be taking to put in place mitigation efforts within contracts so that we don't see this wholesale cascade of risks throughout the supply chain, where those often with the least ability to weather the storm are stuck with the largest amount of impact?
I think so. All of the things we've been discussing, like different arrangements up front, um, like a different financial arrangement built in from the beginning, and different ideas of sell-through. Absolutely. I think all of the stuff we're talking about needs to be put on the table and rehashed out and rewritten for the future.
This is a tough one from Jenny Lutskanov. Again, sorry if I mispronounced that. There's a huge number of people at the moment who don't have a job. Yeah. What do you recommend for designers and design professionals to look for coming out of this? Do you see new opportunities, new kind of business models for creatives?
This is so tough right now.
It's really tough.
And I don't know if I have your answer for you, because I'm thinking about all of the people in my own company right now. And how important it is to see them through this, and what we are going to be able to do on the other side to support designers and creatives through this. So I don't yet have that answer. We're really trying to figure that out. And I know it's going to be a challenge. I think that, like, staying in a positive space now, I can speak to this on an emotional level, and staying in a space and continuing to create right now is super important for the creatives. But as far as a recommendation, I don't have the answers to that, because I don't fully know yet the other side of this. I'm sorry.
That's a really tough one. I think everyone in the industry is struggling with. We only have a couple of minutes left, but I think it would be nice to finish by looking at the flip side of that. You spoke earlier about female leadership and the importance of empathetic leadership right now. What do you think that the leaders in the industry can be doing now to create peace of mind and manage as best as possible this really, really difficult scenario for everyone who works with them?
I think from what I'm seeing, continue in the way that they are, through communicating with each other, coming together through these collective workforces that we are, as other companies coming together to think of ideas right now. I think there is a huge responsibility for business owners in this industry to take this time to, and this, could sound however, but to truly take this time to go inward and rethink their existing models. Figure out the broken parts now. Just deal with them, get to them, acknowledge them, look at them, and do not just think how we're going to get back to normal. I think we all have to get rid of that word, especially of leaders right now, that no, it's going to be business as usual. In like 6 months, we're going to be back on our feet. And then within 18 months, we're going to get back to the scale that we were at. Throw it out the window. Really, like, get rid of that, because we all almost need to recreate ourselves based on our strengths and build from that place. And coming back to this, the last question, just thinking on that, just on a positive note, I think that, you know, I just want to make it clear that I feel enormous potential in the place that we are in right now, amidst the grief and the loss and the uncertainty and the confusion of what this is. This is also such an unbelievably exquisite time for potential and for new worlds and for the creatives that we are talking about to be in places of leadership and to think from these untapped places inside of us because they were always told to be quiet because they weren't about business. Now it's about going into those places, you know, thinking about this reinvention. And from that new world and reinvention, creating space for the people that who just asked that question, that there will be new potentials, there will be a new world. And I think it's staying in that positive mind space. It's like we can bring ourselves, we can tank ourselves by thinking about just how bad. We could just tank ourselves and literally be paralyzed from the fear, uncertainty of it. That's one approach. Or it's a little bit more of a courageous approach. You start thinking and visualizing on this new world and what it should feel like. Start with the feeling and then what it should look like. And then who it includes more people. There's great potential here. So keep going into that inner workplace. I know. And I think that that is a female leadership place, is that we are more cozy with the darker spaces, the less obvious spaces, the more emotional, intuitive, compassionate, empathic places. And those are part of new leadership.
We are sadly out of time, but thank you for ending on such a positive and honest note. That was wonderful, Mara. It was always such a pleasure to speak to you.
I love talking to you too. And thank you everyone who tuned in. We've got this. In some way or another, we will get through this.